observe the needs and desires and wants that you have in this life, the striving. Observe the striving. Whatever it is you strive to be, an integration professional, a community server. So observe the vision and observe the striving. And the striving is the relationship. And integration is all about relationships. So once you're able to observe your relationship, this is where you're going to find all the healing, the growth, the answers that you're seeking, the alignment, your values, everything is in your relationship to the vision. And that's my method of integration at the end of the day, and this is what I recommend for everyone to do, is observe your striving, and from that place you will receive all the answers, and you'll know exactly how to create your career of service in the psychedelic revival.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic Conversations podcast. I have with me Shiri. Once again, she's with us. We had a conversation not long ago, but I was so impressed and I felt like we didn't cover enough. We didn't deep dive enough. And I wanted to have Shiri back again. So there she is. Welcome, Shiri.
Thank you, Susan. Another multidimensional conversation about to go down.
Yes, absolutely. And for in the show notes, we will add the first conversation link for our listeners to go back and check that one out to really understand, because we go through a lot of your background story and how you came into it. If they're interested, they can really kind of go back and watch our first one. I thought it was really powerful. So today, let's do some practical stuff for our listeners. And one of the things that comes again and again to my mind and to my awareness, and also a lot of people are asking me lately, how do I learn to become an integration therapist or a coach? Before that, let me introduce you again, just in case new members or new listeners are joining. So Shiri, you are a pioneer in the psychedelic integration support and creative educator, community builder, and visionary disruptor. So that's Shiri. She's been in the works of the psychedelic medicines and integration for so long. Maybe you can say a few words about yourself to us, to our listeners who may be new to your work, and then we can deep dive into your integration offers. And like I said, a lot of people are asking me now, where can I go to train in this? Like, who are those ethical, authentic people that could provide for me? So,
sure. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm super stoked to be here. So, of course, my full bio is on my website. I'm going to provide a little bit of context that I feel can be beneficial to the conversation. If you are listening in because you're interested in joining the field, contributing to the psychedelic revival, and becoming a psychedelic integration coach. So this has been my journey, basically, and to when I got started and really wanted to serve in this space, like most people listening, I'm a psychonaut. Psychedelics and plant medicines highly impacted me in highly positive ways, which awakened me to the fact that I'm here to serve. And from that space, of course, the sky was the limit. The sky was always the limit as far as we are able to perceive it. And I think that is key. And from the limited mindset that I had back then, and back then, I mean 2015, I believed that the way to get into the field was to become a psychedelic therapist. This is how I wish to serve. And I came across the word integration for the first time at a conference in Los Angeles, which I attended and volunteered in. And from the mouth of Dr. Susana Bustos, who is a professor at CIIS, and she gave a presentation about it. And I recall, out of all the dozens of presentations that were presented that weekend, that idea of the support that is vital for the well-being of the individual and the environment, the personal and the transpersonal, of all the people that are engaging with these substances without having proper frameworks, proper harm reduction tools, proper relationships, that was really fascinating to me. So I recall sitting in that chair, and as soon as I heard that word integration, writing it in my notebook at the top of the page and circling it. And at that moment, I knew that this is the space I want to play in and I wish to contribute in. And but yeah, so how does one really start this journey, right? So again, I went back to what I thought I knew, becoming a psychedelic therapist. So I immediately, or actually I wouldn't say immediately, at that time I was already in school pursuing a master's in psychology degree, which I intended to become a psychedelic therapist through. So the journey that I had planned for myself was to become a licensed clinician. So getting my master's first, then going to get a clinical PhD, which would allow me to become a clinical psychologist and then become a psychedelic therapist through this manner. And of course, as they say, God, we make plans and God laughs. We have expectations, and the universe reminds us that these can always just be intentions. I ended up completing my master's degree in psychology with a specialization in psychedelic integration therapy. Again, I'm speaking about 2014, 15, 16. At that time, this was 8 years ago, there weren't almost any programs that taught psychedelic integration therapy, facilitation. This wasn't really a thing, aside from I believe there was Psychedelic Sitter School, maybe in Colorado at the time, and Being True to You was offering an integration coaching certificate at the time. And I believe that also that year, CIIS just began offering their psychedelic research certificate program that they have for clinicians. There was really nothing else. So the school that I chose, it was Antioch University. It was a progressive, social justice oriented program. And though they did not have a psychedelic program, because of the nature and the environment of that alma mater, I felt that it would be appropriate to introduce to them the idea of coming with, the radical idea of psychedelic psychology. And I took a high risk, but my risk was worth it because they were totally on board and they supported me when I did my own research and wrote my thesis on the topic. And I graduated with a degree specializing in psychedelic therapy. So I believe that decision to follow my intuition and again pick the right environment was a sound decision that I just want to offer it as advice to anyone who's listening, as something that can guide you along the path, among other things that I want to introduce as well. But this is a long answer to who are you?
This is really valuable. Can we just also underline this for our listeners? In order to get into the space, make sure that it feels right, the environment is right for you. So it's very important for them to take themselves into an authentic, it just feels authentic for them, right? Because there's so many different approaches in integration offerings. So I'm sure we can dive into that a bit more and try and dismantle how would that look like for each person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, please carry on.
Yeah. I think the point of, what I was just, attempting to share is you asked me, well, who are you now? Tell us about yourself. And I really dove into how I got started. And from that point of reference, again, to really talk, right now, even I know a lot of people are listening, they're thinking, well, how can I get into the space? It seems impossible. Is it even legit? How can I be credentialed? Is this even credible? Are people going to believe what I do? And, compared to where we were almost a decade ago, the opportunities that we have now, especially as we are already seeing the legalization of plant medicines in some states in the United States, like this week, Colorado just voted to legalize psilocybin-assisted therapy and to decriminalize the possession and I believe also the use of certain substances as long as they're for personal use. So these are major milestones that with every, political gate such as this that are being opened, we are going to see even more opportunities and even more options for training. And so in some ways, I feel like we're kind of here's how we're different and similar. Obviously, back then there weren't many opportunities, and now there are a lot. Back then we didn't know how, and it was confusing, and now there are a lot, and it's also confusing. So I think that the commonality of it, either way, you're really going to have to make a choice by first and foremost. And this is really where I believe the journey, it took me a long time to really learn this and begin conveying this after, the journey that I've made. But one thing that I've learned is before you really can make a decision on what you're going to be and how you're going to do it, is to begin doing your deep inner work study of understanding exactly who you are. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What was your light? What is in the shadow that wants to come into the light? And from that deep process of self knowledge, this is where you're going to receive the answers of what should I be? How am I going to serve? How should I get started? So for me, it was completely a reverse process, but I also, I feel like in some ways learned the hard way. This is kind of like the nature of people who, trailblaze and they kind of like go in the dark and, give this a try, give that a try, and then learn through their journey what works and what doesn't. And this is how I mentor my students now. And this is exactly how I also structured my integration program now based on this journey is actually to save time, to save money, to save a lot of confusion, to save a lot of self-doubt, resources. The best place for you to start is you begin by doing your own inner awareness, inner love, self-love, practices of being a good human. And from that place, everything is going to open up for you in the most aligned way.
And that is super valuable. Yeah. I think it's critical for the person to do their own work before they can even hold space or even help with integration, right? It's just part of the process. What if somebody comes to you and says, look, I've trained in psychology, I'm clinical psychiatrist or doctor, or I understand everything. I've done a lot of work in my life, intellectually, educationally, academically. Just teach me how to do this. What would you say to them? Do you get people like that?
Sure. I mean, I have people applying to my program without even trying having undergone a single psychedelic journey, which I know, I'm aware that there are training programs that psychedelic facilitation training programs that allow people without experience into the training. I don't judge that. I don't oppose it. What people in the space everyone has the freedom and the liberty to create the psychedelic renaissance that they feel is the reality that they want to pursue. For me, so again, the first, as mentioned, the first stop is doing your own inner. I refrain from calling it inner work because I'm kind of against the word work. I feel like that's a really indoctrinized, colonized way of kind of putting us down in our place and disempowering us from our playful, fun, and vivid nature. but go through your own transpersonal, transformational journey for sure. And because you want to operate in a space that is highly unique, that is, again, multidimensional, it's quantum, you're working with a psyche, you're working with the collective unconscious and the archetypes and the ancestors and the plant spirits. And, there's a high level of shamanic work to this as well. This is, shamanism is not something that you can acquire a degree in just by studying a book or taking a test of knowledge about it. It's a visceral wisdom that has been cultivated and kept for millennia, for generations by people who lived and embodied this wisdom. So the difference between acquiring a degree, like you asked me about doctors, therapists who have, gotten all the credentials, but they haven't embodied it, that wisdom, they haven't been through it, they haven't had the experiential aspect of it. I feel like these types of people are missing out on the point of the psychedelic experience, which is a very, again, visceral, multi-level, multidisciplinary technique. And that's why it works. So, I feel like, we can't really, let me rephrase that. We should be, even though up until now, systemically in our society, we have been conditioned to learn that, okay, people who acquire a degree and pass a test are, they're certified to help heal other people. We can also see, the state of our planet in the healing industry, in the same breath. I just want to mention that. And not to say that people who have gotten these degrees they haven't healed them. They're not, of course, they're necessary, they're vital. We need them. And we need the people who are experienced in this field. And there is no substitute for direct, firsthand, personal engagement and journey within your psyche. There's just no substitute for that. So for me, that's a vital part of the journey. They're non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think currently there's a wave of, conversations going around. Dr. Martes revealing his own experience, right? He was in Peru, supposedly helping clinicians. I remember that retreat. Actually, this was like, some time ago. I applied to be there and then I was accepted, but then some other responsibilities came in my way and I couldn't be there. And he was talking specifically about that retreat, saying how the shamans just pulled them aside and said, no, you are not fit to help these people or guide them or help them with integration because you haven't done your own deep work yet. It's the most powerful conversation that he was having lately across all, platforms. And I find so much value in that. And it kind of ties in with what you're saying. If we don't understand the territory and if we haven't experienced it, doesn't matter whether it's a trauma-informed or healing or whatever context, even if it's recreational, if you don't know the territory, it's going to be challenging.
I mean, this is like, I remember the first time that I ever was about, my first psychedelic trip ever, where, a friend invited me to give LSD a try. And I asked him, well, what is it like? Like, can you please describe it to me before I say yes or no? And he said, I can't, like, I don't know how to describe this experience. Like, this is really something that is ineffable, and I ended up, going for it and saying yes. And in the middle of the trip, he asked me, well, what do you think now? Do you think I could have ever described this state to you? And at that moment, I completely understood why, something that seemed maybe a little bit rigid to me and maybe a little stubborn, or, you just don't want to describe it, but actually, like, he was right. And, in some ways, just like they say, until you've given childbirth and became a parent, you will never understand the journey of what it is like, even though that, there are many people who have not physically given birth, obviously, and, or, but they fulfill the roles of parents, mothers, fathers, and they do a wonderful job. But is it identical to the experience of a woman that has given birth and is raising a child that literally was conceived in her body and came out of her body? It's very different, very different. And of course, opinions on this vary. I'm not here to say again what is right, what is wrong. I'm a person that absolutely believes in pluralism and variety in this space. And I believe that all of us, whether credentialed or not, whether we have, the licensure or not, the letters after our name or not, everyone has something to contribute within the space. And we need the wide range of voices and the harmony and the unique medicines that we can each provide. But the reason we have to do our inner journeying, inner transpersonal work, is because from that way we can understand exactly how we're meant to serve, and then we're not overstepping or attempting to serve in roles that do not fit or not appropriate. So everyone has something to contribute for sure, but this is really, as they say, this is the work. Know thyself and know your medicine, and then you know exactly how to serve it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So in one of our conversations, you mentioned something about the concept of integration being like the new thing in the psychedelic revival, which I love that concept as well, revival. I often say renaissance, so that could be my new word.
Yeah.
You said something like this. You said, in the first wave, our elders, for example, psychedelic explorers, they had no concept of integration, and they actually didn't need it. And I do speak to older generation who's gone through the first wave, and it's just incredible how they now seeing something very new emerging, such as integration, because they didn't need to. Do you think we now need integration because we are different? We are a different generation. We become more dissociated. We are on a really fast lane in life, doing too many things. There's a lot of, I think in the last decade as well, there is this crazy idea of high performing, it's almost like there was this explosion of like, you need to step into your creativity. But then we see so many people burning out because they're desperately trying to bring something to life, and they're trying to do so many things all at once. So I think integration really fits in this time, because it could be, would you say that it could be also used as a tool to slow down, I mean, what I'm trying to say, like the importance of integration now is so much more prevalent than how it was in the first wave, I believe. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. The short answer to that would be that culture breeds knowledge and creativity, right? We as humans that are part of our environment, and we co-create the environment, we co-create our reality and culture. Some people are observers and some people are creators. And it's the nature of some people to participate actively and mindfully, and also respond to what they see. And yes, I mean, when you look at the people, the indigenous people who have been drinking one of the most powerful plant medicines known on the planet, the ayahuasca brew. They've been drinking it for speculated that probably thousands of years. They didn't need integration coaches, they not come up with that concept, just as much as they also do not need the DSM-5 or the Diagnostic Statistics Manual for psychopathology, for diagnosing people with a list of mental illnesses. This is also an invention or a modality that was cultivated by culture in the Northern Hemisphere. The indigenous people knew from the get-go that community is where integration is at. And again, they didn't name it that, but they had the wisdom that relationships are above all, and people who feel interconnected and feel a sense of belonging to a group possess a security that people in the West, which we are living a culture that puts a high emphasis on separation. Children, mandatory at age 18, they're expected to leave the house, either go to the military or go to college. Typically, they don't, necessarily come back to the town where they grew up. They kind of, fly off and start a new life. Whereas in other cultures, the children don't leave the nest, even as adults. Everyone, children, parents, grandparents, and elders sit together in the same circle and support one another. So what I'm saying is, I feel like a lot of that wisdom has been lost culturally. For most of the audience that's listening to this podcast, typically the UK, United States, Canada, Australia, Europe, or what is considered to be more quote unquote advanced countries, we have advanced in many ways and also have forgotten the basic practices of humaning. We've disowned them culturally. We've dismembered them, and integration is a remembrance. It's a call for remembrance. It's a mindfulness call for people who wish to engage with these indigenous practices that are rooted in community and connection and relationship, to take a sacred pause and by virtue of that begin to cultivate that missing relationship with yourself and with the medicine as the primary relationship of this modality. And it's brilliant. And when you think about it that way, integration really is a type of technology that, sure, it's novel, we're like using a lot of new words, but it's really a reiteration for an ancient technology of remembering to return to community. And integration is exactly that, to first commune with yourself so you can commune with the plants, so you can commune with the transpersonal, and then return to being a part of the environment and the larger global circle.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I feel like we're covering like the pillars of what it is to understand integration and why it's important. Your website is so rich, and I was looking through it today and I saw you have so many freebies, and there was one that really stood out for me. 5 master level integration skills. I don't know if you wanted to talk for these, if you wanted to share with us, because we will put your links in the show notes that people can check it out. But just for now, for the conversation, to understand it a bit more better.
Yeah. So, okay, you caught me a little bit off guard because I know that I have multiple freebies in there and different techniques. I know that I have a preparation strategy, an integration strategy. I also have, I believe there's what I call the 5 golden rules of psychedelic integration. And maybe that's the one that I would like to focus on.
Yes, I think it's the one. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So basically a few tips for anyone who is interested in applying this modality, which again, it's a relational technology of mindful engagement and right relationship with psychedelic substances, plant medicines, and entheogens. So this is basically like what I believe integration theory is. My approach of integration believes that integration begins the moment that we begin thinking of engaging with a ceremony, taking MDMA, taking LSD, or taking a mushroom. The moment that that idea crosses our mind and we begin mulling it over, thinking about it, is this a good idea? Why do I want to do it? Where am I going to do it? Where am I going to get the substance? How long is it going to take? Who's going to be there with me? Intentions and so forth. The moment that cognitive and emotional and really multidimensional process of engagement with that modality begins, that's when you're already beginning to integrate that modality into your psyche and into your life. So in that sense, integration is before, during, and after the experience, and not, what happens after the ceremony ends. Really, I believe that every day is a ceremony, and maybe that's like a topic for another conversation. But I really think that psychedelics remind us that life is so sacred. Every day is indeed a ceremony, and you realize at a point that again, we only need, and this is like to go back to your question from earlier, why do we need integration, is because we forgot that every day is an opportunity to be in communion with the divine. And we only need substances when we're totally forgotten, and we really need that, to break through the illusion. So integration supports that. But okay, so that was the first one. Integration is what happens before, during, and after the ceremony. Another golden rule that I would like to share is that what happens when really big insights come up that feel so true and they seem so extremely urgent. Have you ever had that?
Yes, I think I can testify to that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like you get out of ceremony and you feel, okay, I know that I have to leave my job to serve the divine, whatever you want to do, to serve medicine, to go to the jungle to do a deep study, to leave a relationship because you understand that it's not right for you anymore. Whatever the insight is, when we have big insights like that we know can really alter our lives in a very big and meaningful way. The golden rule of that is to, first of all, take a deep breath, allow yourself time to recover from the experience. And even if it seems like a really good idea, and I just also want to give credit to one of my teachers from Los Angeles, from which, this is what he used to say in ceremonies. Even if it feels like a really good idea right now, if it is a really good idea, then it will still be a good idea in 2 or 3 months' time. Which basically the recommendation would be to just wait for at least a few weeks, if not 2 or 3 months, until you really make huge leaps in your life. That again can, if you leave your job and you don't have a safety net, you don't know where you're headed, you don't have that financial support, it could really wreck you and put you in places that can be not just uncomfortable, but also risky and dangerous. So that's not the point or the modality of psychedelics at all. A lot of people come in to achieve those breakthrough moments and to completely change their lives. But I feel like that's kind of this story of psychedelics being a magic pill. This is what pop culture has created, go into a ceremony, going to be like 10 years of therapy, and people come in expecting huge transformation like that without putting in or investing effort and time to mature, to process, to really to change their habits, to do it more sustainably. So a lot of people, end up again, not approaching mindfully and acting impulsively, and then they get exactly the opposite of what they came in for. So that was the second rule.
Yeah, this is very powerful. I think we talk a lot about this in our circles, in our communities. Don't rush, take your time, because, I have a theory that, if you are someone who operated from a very, unconscious, adaptive ways and compulsive ways all your life, imagine decades of your life who's you've been building through that energy, the decisions that you've made, the life that you created, and the impact that you made in a life. through that energy, it is not going to be cleared or sorted in one decision or one day of making radical decisions. So therefore, it's going to take time, just as how much is taken the person to build that life may not serve them anymore, or dysfunctionally may, but the mindfulness is that to go in and really take your time slowly with little steps, dismantling and uncovering, unraveling, so that you can reveal what is serving in the long term. Yeah. But like you said, in the West, unfortunately, there is this propaganda that we could just change our lives overnight, come out, walk away from the ayahuasca ceremony and be a different person. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this. I'm glad you bring it up, because I think this is definitely the golden rule of the integration. So that's very valuable.
Yeah. Yes, and on, another thing that comes to mind is really viewing the idea of integration as, and again, I'm just going off of what seems to become true in the integration world. Like when you find an integration coach, most coaches or many coaches will offer an integration package of one or two, maybe one session before to prepare, and then 2 or 3 sessions after the experience. And then that's the integration container, and which I feel can potentially send a message of, okay, this is how long integration takes, 2 sessions of 1 hour, and then you're done. And going back to the concept of, well, life is a ceremony and every day is a ceremony. Integration itself has a cadence, it has a rhythm. There are stages that we mature through in that process, and it can be categorized. That whole process can be categorized in different ways. So one way that I would like to share today is to look at integration as a long-term process, meaning one that can take not just weeks, but months and literally years, meaning an insight that you could have in a ceremony this weekend, which maybe not even be that clear, right? Just, how you have let's say out of a pool of, 20 insights, for example, maybe you'll have 2 or 3 that are super clear, and then maybe 2 or 3 that are okay. And then the rest would be like, what the heck was that? And then they may tend to be forgotten, right? So it's usually kind of like that. So let's say that we look at those that are not so clear and we have no idea why they came up. Okay, but they still remain with us. We don't know what to do with them. We're not sure how to integrate them, how to interpret them. They make no sense. If you remain with the integration process long enough, which again, integration is a cultivation of mindfulness towards the psyche and developing a relationship with your inner self, so you can then commune with a transpersonal, with what is beyond the self. You could find that because that has been held with you and contained with you, and again, you've been in some sort of awareness and dialogue with it, that seed of an insight can return to you in a ceremony 2 or 3 years later, and suddenly just completely unravel itself and be as clear as day, and also will reveal to you why it was necessary for so much time to pass, because circumstances have changed, you have changed, you've probably taken other medicines in this meantime, maybe you're in different relationships, you are not the same person. And maybe the person that you were 2 years ago wasn't prepared for the magnitude of this insight to reveal itself fully to you. So integration is again a lifelong, can be a lifelong commitment if you're a committed person to the studies of the psyche. And we can also look at it again as having different stages. So I personally like to look at the window that is right after a ceremony, typically depending on the medicine, but typically between 72 hours to 2 weeks, as what I call the short-term integration process. And in that period of time, it's best to focus on recovery, on rest, on rejuvenation, on just returning to balance, making sure that you're nourished, getting your foods, you're sleeping well again. That, if you experience some low mood after MDMA, for example, we go through, because of the depletion of serotonin, then we may be in a lower mood, maybe a little bit depressed. So waiting for everything to rebalance again before you move into the long-term process, integration process, which is a more active stage of more, okay, now you can observe the insights, do all your practices, do your journaling, decide what you want to work on, begin the active engagement, take it to the therapy room, do all your different, basically really get in there and really begin implementing the actions that would bring this insight to life. So the first stage is more passive, restful, feminine. The second stage, which is indefinite, is more, again, masculine, active, actionable steps.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I just want to check back to what you said about having insights along with your big insights, but not really doing much about them. They get forgotten or something, and then suddenly they come back, or at least they become more obvious and they reveal to you. In this process, we call this the capacity building. So like you said, you may not be ready for it. Maybe you needed to go through some other emotions to get that resiliency or the capacity to be with the next unfolding phase. And I love that. And just remembered Rick Doblin's conversation about this when he said, I think he said something along the lines of, I'm still unpacking my LSD experience 20 years ago.
Sure.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely kind of ties in with what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And one more thing that comes to mind on the topic of integration, we can obviously speak about this for hours, but I feel it is worth mentioning the idea of, okay, everyone's favorite topic. How do I make sense of this insight? Well, I want to begin by, first of all, bringing your awareness and asking yourself, why is there a need to translate or understand or interpret anything that comes up in the psychedelic experience? What if all of it was gifted to you? Not so us, when I'm speaking to myself, by the way, as an analyst of psyche space, this is my life, my career, my passion. I still ask myself, why do I have this almost obsessive compulsive need to understand everything that comes through the space? What if the divine just aims to show us its richness, its beauty, its diversity, and maybe he's even testing us on how we are responding/reacting to the space? Do we have a need to react or respond to anything that comes out for us in our environment? And what can we learn about ourselves and the way that we operate in the world just based upon observing this need to act or to know?
Yeah, that's so powerful. Oh, that's so powerful. It's a little bit like approaching it through the sacred. This is a sacred and divine experience that is meant just for you. Do you know, in some indigenous or maybe esoteric cultures, there is actually a concept of not sharing everything.
Yeah.
And keeping some things to yourself, because this is, as much as we're in a collective togetherness, there is a divine uniqueness for each of us that we need to sometimes have that patience still in virtue, is definitely true, that really wait for it to unfold itself. And sometimes I think there was one occasion when someone in the circle said, so what does these kaleidoscopes mean? All these shapes and beautiful sacred geometry type things. And I was thinking, it's interesting how we want to understand everything, but what if they are just the information and data in their own way, in sacred geometry, manifested it's basically data and information manifested as a sacred geometry. And by observing and witnessing them, maybe it is kind of integrating or kind of downloading. I don't like saying that word, but do you know what I mean? Somehow we are
they're just what if they're just beauty and they're meant to inspire us to just be with it, and just again from that relationship that we're able to cultivate with this beauty, right? And of course, beauty, I mean, to each their own, but we can see as anything, absolutely anything in the psychedelic space, as fear evoking as it is, as quote unquote dark as it is, as quote unquote negative as it is, and all the judgments that we have towards these energies that come up, these are all judgments at the end of the day. But what if all of it, as you say, is information and can be seen as beauty, and we're just there to hold relationship with it and learn to hold space for all of these entities, everything else that is real right here with us at this time, and learn how to, in that moment, to be kind and create a compassionate, loving space with all of the craziness that happens in that space. What if that is the point of it all? I don't know. I don't really know. And I question myself a lot. And in that way of, okay, what if this entire theory, all these theories that we're all cultivating in these spaces, this entire psychedelic revival, okay, all of it is has been created by people like myself, people like you, people like Rick Doblin, anyone that is a psychonaut and felt like they wanted to interpret what they see in a certain way and contribute.
Yeah.
What is the point of all of this? What if the point is just to have these beautiful conversations and share what we know is true for us?
Yeah.
And what, to circle back to what the elders knew all along, what if the point is just to help us create these relationships, which, I don't think you and I would have ever met if we didn't have this mutual interest of sharing what we know about psychedelics.
It's wild just to think about it. It's so wild, right? And that would be the bigger picture. I love talking about the bigger picture. What if all of this noise, when we get beyond it, it's just the connections and the experience and just being with it all. Yeah, very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, having these golden rules, just because we're human beings with curious minds, want to make sense of everything, interpret everything, understand everything, I think it's the need to make things certain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said methods give us exactly certainty. They give us a form or of control. It's like we feel like we're in control of something. And I feel like I've been in the space for 8 years, and my work changes along with me. To this point, I've had 5 or 6 psychedelic businesses, and they've all been a reiteration of who I was at that time. And even now, with where I'm at with the Psyched Soul, with my 1.5 year long integration training program, again, I always question myself and always, look back at who I was yesterday and think, wow, this person had all these ideas and all these notions and this particular awareness that's created that. And is that still right for this current version that speaks right now at this very moment? And that version of me that's created the school with the integration method, with the integration protocol, with what we call the integration flows, the rules, everything, all of these constructs that helped me make sense of such an ineffable and wide and rich space, and really helped me ground into my humanity as a working woman at a certain time in my life. And I share, the knowledge that I've gained with, people in my programs, my students, and on social media. And I do believe that information meets us, when we're ready. And then at a certain point, as you grow, you will grow to receive other information. So I do believe that, again, and going back to what we shared earlier, that everyone has something to contribute, no matter what leg of the journey you're on. In the past, I was convinced that credentials are so important in that space, but I was also convinced that because I didn't have any confidence. And so that the credentials and becoming a coach and getting the master's degree, all the things that made me feel comfortable in presenting myself as an integration professional, I needed those because they gave me the confidence and the credibility that I felt I needed. And now, again, from the place that I'm at now, I feel like credentials, again, are important, but I just want to go back to, like, it all begins with who you are, what your medicine is, what your values are. Okay. If you right now decide to invest in a program that will get you into the psychedelic renaissance, I recommend that you invest in a program that takes you on an inner journey. That, of course, is psychedelic minded, right? That will provide you with the educational tools and skills, because those are extremely important as well. But even more important than that, education and knowledge you can get anywhere these days, but nowhere else can you go to school with your inner self, aside from, the journey that you decide to take. So find a program and invest in a program that takes you on that inner experiential journey. That would help you uncover all this, and dispose of all the stories. And then you may even find that you don't even need that PhD, and I never ended up getting that PhD at the end, the one that I was so hell-bent on getting when I just got started.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. This is beautiful. Gosh, I want to bring so many threads here. One of them is, again, Dr. Gabor Mate. He says, it's hilarious the way he says it. He goes, when the shamans took him outside the Maloka, he says, they weren't interested that I had written bestsellers and impacted millions of people, and I had all these credentials. I love that. I think this is definitely the journey. You've just kind of given me so much insight about the psychedelic journey itself is the evolutionary journey of each human, each of us. And I think all of these things that we create, that's fine. There are expression of ourselves, expression of our interpretations, but ultimately in the core, when we peel everything, it's that authentic essence that we just want to be together and, connected and safe and, just see this life as a gift and enjoy and be,
totally.
Right?
Totally. And I feel like this is so accurate, especially for people who possess that visionary nature. We see big, we think big, so big that we tend to make huge leaps. We see the vision and we go right to the vision. And then our journey, just like, again, as I shared, it was like a total reverse process for me. I saw the vision and I created it and I became that. And then it was reverse engineered. Like, actually, I need to return to the fact that I'm a human being, that this human being needs 8 hours of sleep, needs to be active every day, needs to take her vitamins, needs to just put in or just have the basic practices of wellness intact first before, I go after any global psychedelic mission.
I love that. This is so great. I love that. I don't think I told you my favorite story. A friend of mine is a psychoanalyst. He's a professor of psychoanalysis. He told me this. He said, there was a nun. She spent 40 years in the monastery, just practicing being a nun. And when she finally retired, she decided to go home. And they wanted to interview her. And they said, excitedly, what did you do in these 40 years? Did you speak to God? Did you commune with the angels? Did you see spirits? And she just kind of paused for a long time, took a deep breath and said, I learned two things, how to eat and how to sleep.
Wow.
It's exactly what you're saying. Yeah. I love that. And it also ties in with my own experience when I first came into it. Also, like you said, leaps of, fast forward, jumping ahead and really, embracing the transformational process, but then only coming back to the beginning point of realization that all I want to do is be a better navigator in the mundane, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we don't, as much as our mind likes to tell us, we don't, we exist in the quantum field as well, but the reality is that we are more in this body than in the quantum field. Most of us, at least. Of course, there are these ascended masters that, most of us are not that. We live in this body, in this meat suit. We have these conversations. We raise children. We have a job. We have, bills to pay. We do live, at the end of the day, we're visionaries living in a matrix. And before we put in and invest all of our energy on breaking out of the matrix, first learn how to exist here. And then that's going to be your foundation. That's going to help you make leaps and bounds in any other reality that you wish to create. That much I know is true. And again, it's taking me 8 years to learn this, literally. And I think really that's the message I want to leave with everyone here today. Okay, is observe the needs and desires and wants and wants that you have in this life, this striving. Observe the striving, whatever it is you strive to be, an integration professional, a community server, the next Rick Doblin. So observe the vision and observe the striving. And the striving is the relationship. And integration is all about relationships. So once you're able to observe your relationship, this is where you're going to find all the healing, the growth, the answers that you're seeking, the alignment, your values, everything is in your relationship to the vision. And that's my method of integration at the end of the day, And this is what I recommend for everyone to do, is observe your striving. And from that place, you will receive all the answers and you'll know exactly how to create your career of service in the psychedelic revival.
I love that. This is a beautiful place to end our conversation.
Yeah.
As we came to the end of the session. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
For your energy, for your wisdom, for everything you bring and your authenticity to be so revealing and carrying the embodiment. It's really, really important, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I do want to share with the audience that even though currently, so my play school, which is again the 18-month integration certification and what we call the soulpreneurship, which is creative sacred entrepreneurship journey that I've created. So the play school is currently on hiatus and not opening registration until probably spring of 2023. However, I have decided to open up the soulpreneurship. I mean, we have a soulpreneurship portion opening up in January with people that have already committed to that journey about a year ago. And I've decided to open up a few spaces in that program, which is 5 months. So basically, it's a psychedelic oriented, not a career school, but an creative entrepreneurship and leadership container, where we do that inner work of understanding who we are, to again, understanding what we stand for, what our values is, what our mission is at this lifetime, and then acquiring the skills to become powerful change makers, paradigm shifters, disruptors, back in your community. So that's opening in January, actually. And if anyone that's listening is interested, of course, you can visit my website, psychedsoul.com, and apply.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for all the work you're doing and everything that you're offering. Thank you
so much.
Yeah, we'll have all of your details, your full bio and your links in the show notes. And if you guys are interested, do reach out to Shiri. Yeah, don't be shy. Talk to us, drop some comments. If you have any questions, further questions, you can always get in touch with Shiri. And thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this session as much as I did. It's been so grounding and it's just so been breath of fresh air. I can't speak anymore. I need to take time out to ground everything. Yeah, it's just been so beautiful, especially in this time of such fast transformation and change. It just demands us to be more grounded, I think, more connected and more together. So thank you. Appreciate you all. Thanks, Shiri.
Thank you. Blessings, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelic-conversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.